Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builder Supply, and this video is to bring you a closer look at the Pemko number 114D. This is a threshold, as you can see. This is a somewhat specialized threshold in the sense that it's not a saddle, it's not a half saddle, it's not a transition. It's what we call an interlocking threshold. And this design of threshold is for sure 100. Interlocking is probably at least 150 years old in terms of material that you can expect if you were to find old catalogs to look like this. The concept of interlocking is incredibly old, time-tested, and true. Interlock thresholds are very elegant solutions, and the way that they operate is they have, by virtue of the profile of the threshold and a complementary piece, the hook strip, they form a positive mechanical lock. Now, you know, an interlocking threshold from 1930 would not have provided really any R value, but it sure would have prevented the absolute intrusion of draft, of moisture, and you know, it wouldn't have prevented the transition of hot to cold, so to speak, but it would sure be a dead stop because of how the materials interlock together. Interlocking is a concept that's used not only in thresholds but in weather stripping as well, and I regret to say that the available options in terms of purchasing interlocking weather stripping continues to get far smaller, with people no longer being available to manufacture metal weather stripping, whether it be for a threshold is not so bad, but it's the roll-formed zinc and bronze that's used on the jambs and the header. But the same principle. So if you're going to have an interlock threshold at the bottom, it's possible that you're going to have interlocking threshold on the jambs and at the header as well. But this video is about a threshold. So the 114 is representative of this profile. It's going to look like this. It has very specific dimensional properties that are related directly to that part number, and let's look at those now. They say that it's 4 1/4 wide. That's correct. And they say that it's 1/2 inch tall in the overall height. A little bit hard to gauge that because of where we're putting the tape measure, but it does appear to be accurate. You get down over here where your door is probably going to reside, you know, you're likely going to be closer to about 1/4 inch or thereabouts. There's no absolute rule which side will be the interior, but if you were to follow the standard convention of what a frame would look like on an in-swing, your door is probably going to reside in here, right? So this would be the interior of the space. The longer portion would be the exterior. Now, you say to yourself, okay, great. Where's this complementary piece? Well, it's right here. This is what's called a hook strip. We would call it a J-hook. You can use your imagination and see why we would certainly call it a J-hook. The way that these work simply is that this piece gets nailed to the bottom of the door and interlocks, and Pemko has a bit too severely crimped the bottom of this. So let me open up that preparation that they've done here. Pause this video and be back. Okay, we put the big crescent wrench on that piece, and let's take a look at how this would work. So the hook strip, of which there's more than one design, this gets nailed to the bottom of the door, and when the door closes, comes in, it makes that seal right. Sorry, it makes that seal right there. And obviously, I wasn't able to get it perfect because I only spent 4 seconds doing that. But that's what we look like. Okay, door opens, door closes. Very positive mechanical seal that's happening there. Why is that advantageous? Well, if you're in a northern climate, it's for sure going to keep draft out. Growing up in Chicago, I've stood in front of poorly insulated front doors on homes, and you can just feel the polar vortex, which is not a funny joke, coming underneath the door. If you are in the Southwest, you probably don't have 18 degree below without the wind chill coming in, but you have the possibility of scorpions. Sounds a bit obtuse, but people call me and say, I need an automatic door bottom because, oh, do you have sand? It's not excessively cold in Phoenix. No, I got to keep the scorpions out. Yeah, got it. So mechanical interlock is great for that as well. It'll sure help keep out the critters, is the bottom line. Now, there are different hook strips, and this is a J-hook, as I said earlier. You can see why we call it that. And just quickly, how you're going to install it is going to look very briefly. With a J-hook, I would tell you that there are probably, you know, 2 different ways to do this. And both will be represented by extremely poor sketches that I'm currently doing. Gosh, I hope this is worth it for you. Okay. 2 common ways of doing this. Flush to the bottom. Obviously nothing's to scale, but this is kind of what it looks like. If you want to level up and go full master level on it, you can do a mortise on the bottom of the door. The advantage of that is it just does drop your door height below, so that while you would never see any of this from your perspective, unless you were laying on the floor, this is a classy way to do it. And carpenters, fine woodworkers, people who specialize in solving people's problems of interlocking thresholds, because nothing against the handyman, but the handyman doesn't get into routing the bottom of wood doors, not any handyman I've met. The finer, the people who specialize in fine woodworking, they're only going to do it this way because they know how to do it, and they can, and they know the difference. One is preferred over the other. That's the bottom line. But this is 99% of the time. This is 999% of the time right there. Now, there's another hook style that's available, and that would be the L hook. And if you use your imagination, you know what that looks like. That would be a hook that is another poor drawing, unfortunately. Looks like that. Okay. The advantage of the L hook is that you don't have to take the door off the hinges. Some people, that's a deal breaker for them. So they'll go with an L hook. The disadvantage, of course, you can see that on the bottom of the door. But truly, I've seen L hooks installed on I've been in people's homes, and I've noticed, oh, they have an L hook there. No one notices that. No one does. So I do. Hardware people do. But normal people don't. You'll screw it through here. But this is really the one that we're talking most about. Okay, that's really kind of what you're going to look for. Now, what's a bit unusual about the 114 interlock is that it is very short. It's only 1/2 inch overall height. Now, there are certainly other thresholds that are interlock, but they're much taller, 7/8, 1.25 inches. The advantage to those sorts of, not the advantage, but where you would use those sorts of models is the application whereby you had a provision of what would be called a water return. So if this was 7/8 tall, any water that would get in this area, they would drill a hole right here, and then they would file or notch small holes in the face of the threshold. So any water that did get in would come in here and then cycle back out here. And a water pan is a common option for these thresholds because it is a piece of thin gauge material that will sit underneath here to help prevent any sort of water that might collect underneath the threshold performing its job. So the question becomes is, what height will you cut the door to? Well, you know that you need 1/2 inch here. You're going to have to permit a small amount, a reasonable amount of room for our hook strip. Okay. You know, you're probably going to need to allow 1/8 of an inch to the center line of the inside portion of the hook strip. Another 1/16 of an inch or so. So maybe 3/16 margin to get that in there. One thing that I don't like how wide this is. They don't need to be this wide, as you may have noticed earlier, but the reason it's that wide is because you have to account for the head of the nail that's going to go underneath here. And those nails, and the fat, and the screws, by the way, they're all included. Okay. Now, I've had people call me up and say, hey, Rich, you sold me the hardware for my house 15 years ago. Hey, how are you doing? It's been a long time. Okay. Yeah, the threshold. My door doesn't close. Okay, what happened? I don't know. I was there on Saturday. I was moving some furniture in and out, and I pulled the door off the hinges because I needed an extra inch, and I put the door down and rehung the door. Now the door won't close. And I says, well, that sounds strange. I says, you know what you should probably do is stick your hand underneath the door and tell me if you feel anything there. Hang on. Puts the phone down. Comes back, yeah, there's something underneath there. I don't know what it is. Hook strip. Put the door down, smash the hook strip, and now the door doesn't close. The advantage of the interlocking method is this is cheap, and it's known to last decades. Okay, interlock thresholds literally last decades. The only time they really start to fatigue is indeed the hook strip, where it will no longer seal correctly because over years and years and thousands of cycles, this will eventually fatigue, and the holes that go through this steel, this is just wipe coat galvanized steel, will ovalize and allow this micro movement. You ovalize it to the point where it no longer latches correctly. It's just time for a new hook strip. Or also door sag. If your door starts to sag and now your margin is no longer consistent or what it was originally, yeah, you're going to have a problem with the hook strip. So you need to keep a door in proper working condition to take full advantage of your interlock principle, and that's the bottom line. So the 114 is available. I'm going to pull up the different finishes that we can do this in. 114. Let's take a look. And while I'm waiting for that catalog to load, this is available in different lengths. Let's talk about the lengths. Everything from 2 foot to well past 8 foot, or it will be at some point. Anything longer than 7 foot gets quite costly to ship, but I cannot understand why you would need such long pieces of weather stripping thresholds. 8 foot would possibly really be the max. The possibility that you might need a custom length is real. This is a 42-inch piece. Obviously, I'm going to guess that this is a 3'6" by 8 foot door, maybe an arch top, maybe 2 1/4. Guy's doing a nice job, wants an interlock threshold. Okay, so if the point of this is this is a little bit longer than 3 foot, obviously, which is more standard. If you have need for a custom length, by all means let us know by ordering the next longest piece or pieces and simply indicate in the comment field what length you'd like for us to cut the material out to, and we'll be happy to oblige. The reasoning is it will save you the trouble of having to cut it. The factory does get a nice factory edge here. Plus, if you had to take, let's say a 36 and cut it down to a 32, you'd eliminate that first countersink that's there. You'll have to drill another countersink. Then your holes aren't symmetrical running down the unit. I already showed you the screws. So if you have need for a custom length, by all means, let us know. Order the next longest piece or pieces, and simply indicate in the comment field what length you'd like for us to cut it out to, or cut it back to, because it's coming off the shelf in extrusions, 16 plus feet. The factory doesn't care what they cut it to. 42 is as random as a size as any other size, right? Other finishes, A for mill aluminum, D for dark bronze, and G for gold anodized. Then you can do this in a solid bronze base material. So aluminum, mill, dark bronze, and gold, or solid architectural bronze, onto which you can leave it mill, do a satin brass, do a polished brass, do an oil rub bronze, probably do a satin bronze as well. I've had Pemko do a satin bronze process over a solid architectural bronze base material on a threshold, and you'll know it as brass. I call it architectural bronze. That's more of an industry correct term, obviously, than saying it's brass. Brass is too generic of a term. It depends on what finish is being done to it. And it looked beautiful. Solid bronze interlocking thresholds I have seen installed on doors that are over 100 years old. The base material, when it's bronze, is so much more substantially capable of lasting much longer because of the durability of the material. It's simply outrageous. What also is outrageous is the upcharge from aluminum to architectural bronze. It is orders of magnitude more expensive. So be mindful of that. However, the logic would be if you're here in southern Florida where we are, and there's neighborhoods here that you would be a $3 million home or $4 million home would be quite typical in certain neighborhoods. Yeah, you're not putting on an aluminum threshold. So, everything in relationship to itself, I suppose. Great principle. I love interlocking thresholds, and I hope that you consider the benefits of them. I don't see any disadvantages of them whatsoever. You could even approach it with a belt and suspenders method as well, and even throw if you wanted to get super fancy, even throw an automatic door bottom out here, so you had a point of seal right here as well. I don't think I've ever seen that done. Finally, below this video is a link to the manufacturer's page where you can pull up not only all of the Pemko products that we sell, but also a link to the manufacturer's website, as well as a link to the full product catalog. Any questions on the Pemko 114D, interlock threshold, or any other Pemko product, please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you.